Hello! This is Hooked by Happenstance. I'm Kendra, and it is time for chapter number 6 of Yarn Tales. Yarn Tales is an ongoing series here at Hooked by Happenstance where I read books, I tell you about them, and then I apply some silly Kendra rules to my rating system of the books, and I make a reading shawl to kind of catalog and booklog all the things I've been reading this year. So, what book did I read? Well, I read via audiobook The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I listened to it through RB Digital, which is an audiobook service that I access through the Kansas State Library. Check out your state and local libraries for free access to audiobooks because there's lots of options out there. I would assume wherever you are as well. Because if we have as many options as I have here in the sticks, y'all who live in more suburban areas should have no problem finding access. Anyways, I picked this book because I've been talking with my hub and stance about shows and things that were out that he thought I might like, and he had seen that The Magicians was a thing. I think it's on Sci-Fi, and I was like, I've heard that name. I couldn't remember why, and then he mentioned that it was a book series, and then I remembered I've heard people talk about it on some booktube videos here and there. So I went and looked into it, and my library had access to all the books in the series, so I was like, well, that seems like a series that maybe I should try out, because it basically explains it as being kind of like Harry Potter and Wizarding School, but with whiskey added, which is probably a pretty good description. It is basically a book about a number of young people who find out, or some of them already know, that they are wizards. They end up at this wizarding school, but it is nothing like Hogwarts. It is a dirtier, grittier, more grown-up school, and they also throughout this book progress a number of years quite quickly, which takes them from starting at like 17 and leads to them being obviously in their early 20s, which means the content they can cover is more adult in nature because they are more adult in nature. So the book is 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts. I don't exactly remember because since I listened to it on audiobook, I only catch those kind of things the one time the narrator says part 3 and then continues. And I remember there being a part 3, but then I remember there being like 2 or 3 more things that I would consider significant changes in the book after that. So I forget exactly how many parts it has. But it begins with a guy finding out that he is going to take this test. And it is a test to determine if he is magical, if he is a magician. And he finds out, yes, he is. He is very good at like sleight of hand magic. He already knew that. But beyond that, he is just generally a actual magician instead of just like David Blaine, who is not. So it runs through him going to the school, his interactions with the other students during the time that they're all in classes and such. He finds out he's kind of special. Which, you know, is always the case with a book with wizards. The wizard that you follow is always somehow special. You just don't know how. And then it moves through their process of training. There finally comes a point when they're all out in the real world. That part was interesting. So the school part I really enjoyed. There's a second segment of schooling. Also enjoyed that. Third part of life. That part was fine. Then we move on to kind of what I think is the big adventure of this story, which eventually leads to what I call blah 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 battle. I don't care about battles in books. In fact, I tend to avoid books that are primarily battle based because it just blah 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 battle, and then I find out at the end who won, and then we go from there, right? So that happens, and then it goes back into real life. And again, it seems to have remnants of the blah 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 battle in it. Again, I didn't really feel any connection to that. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this book because I enjoyed the world building. I enjoyed the writing style and structure. However, I have one main complaint about that. I did not enjoy the way the women characters were talked about in the book. I actually went and looked as I was reading a few chapters in, and I was like, I should look up Lev Grossman and make sure there's been nothing questionable about him, because there's something really skeezy about the way he's talking about his female characters, and that bothered me. I looked it up, didn't find anything notable immediately, so that's good. I think that perhaps it was an actual choice by the author because the female characters are seen through the main character, who is a teenage boy. So I think that it was supposed to be showing the male gaze on the women, but like, women are people, and it would have been nice to hear them referred to more, like less sexualized, less kind of demeaned in the wording choices. However, the female characters are super strong and they do things, and it's not like they're weak characters. I just found it very demeaning, a lot of the way they were described. But, I mean, I do think it was a stylistic choice, and I guess we'll see in the future books how it continues, how I fully feel about that. Because as they grow up and the character matures, if it shows him have growth as a person, then maybe it had a purpose. Otherwise, it was just continuing this narrative that it's okay for teenage boys to see teenage girls that way and to continue to talk about them that way. And if people keep reading books that happen that way, they're going to just perpetuate that cycle. So it probably, even if it is realistic to have boys talk that way, maybe authors should write books where they are respectful and view the women as equals and don't sexualize their bodies constantly. And then boys who read those books won't perpetuate what they read. I don't know. Just thinking out loud here. But maybe if we change the way the media portrays these things, we'll change the outcomes. Alright, so you probably want to know what I rated the book overall. I rated the book 4 stars because the world and the characters were so interesting to me. I also felt like the book didn't have a lot of extra stuff that didn't make any sense. All of it eventually tied in a way that I thought was interesting, or I can see how things that were included to help build character. Like I say, am curious to see how the next book goes. I am on the waiting list to get it from my library, and when I get it, then I will find out what happens next. And again, see the character development, because a lot of the characters do seem to continue throughout, though I'm not sure how many of them are going to make it through the whole series. I don't know, I can't quite tell, because the series does move quickly, and the series does move through a person's life, and as we all know, as you grow up, people come and go from your life, and the book is doing a good job of showing that natural progression, like as opposed to the idea that this is a handful of wizards, and they're going to be bestest buds forever. It's not realistic. Things are going to happen, people are going to come, people are going to go, but they will also kind of intermingle and their circles will keep crossing. So we'll see about that. But 4 stars, really enjoyed it, would recommend it to people who like sci-fi fantasy. If you are offended by slight vulgarity of content, this is not Harry Potter, and maybe this book is not for you. But if you're like not prudish and okay with the fair amount of like late teen, early 20 drinking, partying stuff, then yeah, it might be something you want to check out. So let's look at the shawl, which I know is what a bunch of you are here for. As I've mentioned, this is book 6. I'm on the 6th segment of my shawl. The way that the shawl is working is I have different yarns for different kinds of books. So there are books that I'm experiencing with my kids. There are books that I'm getting from my Life's Library subscription. There are books that are audiobooks that I am experiencing on my own. And there are books that I'm reading in physical form on my own. So each of those has a yarn as well as a stitch pattern that I am adding, and then I add textured single crochet rows for the number of stars, which means that you can just, by looking at the shawl, see what types of books I've been reading and also my feelings on those books. So I went through a binge of audiobooks by myself because I was just, I don't know, listening to a lot of things in the evening instead of doing other stuff while I crocheted and worked and sewed and did all those things. So here is the 3 sections of audiobook that I've done so far. And this last one here, you can see the pattern row and then the 4 stars of texture. And I'm really liking how this is turning out. The color for the audiobooks that I am reading is actually made out of yak down. It is from Reiwa Fibers. The base is Embrace, 100% Tibetan yak down, color Summerberry. This yarn was gifted to me by Carla for my birthday. And I only have this much left, which means that at some point I'm probably going to have to use another yarn for audiobooks. I don't know. when I kind of laid this all out, I tried to determine how many books of each kind I thought I was going to read, and like determine based on yardage of yarn which yarns I thought would be best for each one. And this was the thing I had the most of, and I was correct, I think, in using it for the audiobooks. What I did not anticipate was how many audiobooks I was going to be going through. I am reading at a greater rate than 1 book a week right now, which is awesome. And I'm really enjoying it, and it's good for my brain, and it's good for me emotionally, and I think it's good for us, you know, just as something new to talk about. But it's not good for my yarn ball, which is rapidly decreasing. So I will probably have to, at some point, add a different yarn. I don't know if I'm going to add a different yarn in the same color or just a different yarn overall. I have to think on that, and I don't know what I have, or if I'm going to need to buy something. I don't know. We'll see. I haven't decided because there's still ball here, so till it runs out, I don't have to make a decision. Anyways, if you are interested in checking out The Magicians, I would recommend it. Like I said, it is a series. I believe it's a trilogy. I don't know if there are more planned or if it is a self-contained trilogy. And really, even if they claim it's a self-contained trilogy, is that ever true anymore? Because if there's money in book 4, I feel like book 4 is going to happen. Because, you know, authors just don't seem to have the guts to write standalone books anymore because money is there in the series. There's also a show which I eventually would probably like to watch whenever we sign up for Netflix again, but so far my life is doing just fine without it. But someday I'll sign up and then I'll watch The Magicians, which I think is on Netflix. I will find out before I sign up for a streaming service where I can consume The Magicians, and then I will consume it at some point. But I want to read the whole series first, I think. And I'm also encouraging my husband to read them as well, because then we can discuss, and then we'll both be on the same page going into the show. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this. If you'd like to see other episodes of my reading shawl and yarn tales, there is a playlist on the channel here. Also, if you want to subscribe down below, I put out videos intermittently, so the best way to make sure you don't miss out when I do post is by pushing that button. Anyways, I will see you all next time.